Rediscovering AA by William F. I was aware of my potential alcoholism by the time I was 20. Less than 2 years into college, and I was in trouble. My grades were borderline, and the only major I'd settled on was drinking. I was on the rugby team, and my drinking behavior and escapades became legendary. But I knew something was not right with me. About this time, I seemed to experience a self-realization that I might be on the verge of full-blown alcoholism. I frequently had nights that caused me great shame and embarrassment. I was already having blackouts. I mostly avoided legal issues, with the exception of one disorderly order charge. I knew something was wrong with me. Fights with friends and family ensued with my newfound drinking personality. The self-proclaimed wow man was often a ton of laughs and life of the party. I was also the butt of jokes. But it didn't matter. To some, my new wild man persona may have been a bit shocking. Not long ago, in high school, I was considered a fairly shy, quiet kid. I was a better than average student and very good varsity athlete. I was an average, if not well-liked and popular boy. This was mostly the result of my sports success. But then age 18 occurred, and I was legal to get into bars. My life began to take a new turn. By the end of senior year, my new personality kicked in, and there was no turning back. Within the next couple of years, I accumulated some troubling incidents. I would get in fights, get kicked out of bars, get slapped by women, and started to experience health problems. I began to have severe anxiety attacks, likely initiated by alcohol poisoning and withdrawal. The inevitable terror of panic attacks caused me to quit college. At this time, I saw a counselor and went to an AA meeting. At the time, I was being prescribed Valium and don't even remember the one meeting I went to. I do remember some talk about religion and other gibberish I didn't understand. But mostly, I saw that I was way too young for this AA stuff and decided not to return. So, the roller coaster began. Chaos and mayhem ensued into the next few years. I would re-enroll in school, then I would quit. I would get some sorry factory job for a month, and then quit. I would get on trains and head to Florida with no goal or plan. Just go to Florida and get a job. One trip was a 2-week bender in a flea bag hotel room. Returned home with tail between legs. Finally, after this pattern continued for several years, I graduated with a BA in no particular area of expertise. I took the easiest route and majored in sociology. No idea what job that could lead to. I moved to Tampa to live with my mother. I had some awful drinking-related escapades, like totaling the car of a new friend who was kind enough to lend me his keys while I was in a complete blackout. By this time, I was ready to quit the booze life. I landed into AA full throttle after leaving AMA, against medical advice, from a detox center located in one of the seedier areas of my new hometown. Something about myself at this time I could not deny. If I drank even one beer, forget about it. It was just enough to loosen my inhibitions, where I would continue to drink all night. It was always the same. If I started, I would drink until either a bartender kicked me out or until the joint closed. I saw I was truly powerless and comprehended AA's first step absolutely. I never had a problem with that first step. So I landed into my first real attempt at AA when I was 26 years old. Within a relatively short period of time, I loved it. I was never religious and considered myself an agnostic since I was a young kid. But I never paid much attention to the big book thumpers. Most of the old-timers were nice enough to me. I liked some of what they said, but primarily I loved AA for the new camaraderie. I met a bunch of young guys around the same age as myself. This was 1985, and AA was flooded with cocaine addicts getting out of treatment. There were tons of young people back then, so AA provided a new and vibrant social life that this lonesome drinker didn't have. We went to sober AA and NA dances and all types of sober events organized by Young People's Group. Most of my new crew and myself shared the same sponsor. He was an older guy named Roy. He was about 48. For me, the AA meetings by themselves were not enough. If it was just meetings, I would have likely failed, since I was not at all comfortable with all the step talk that seemed completely religious to me. This was in spite of what everyone attempted to say about having a higher power of one's own definition. I never bought into that whole idea. For me, it was the meetings after the meeting that had me. Our merry band of young drunks and druggies rambled off with our Pied Piper, Roy, for coffee and cigarettes, to talk. These were the real talks. The young drunks became so close to one another. There was a bond that I only barely experienced once in my life. This bond was somewhat similar to my days up in New England. I remember those cold nights, cozying up to the bar with my buddies. These were the guys I grew up with. But this new coziness with these new friends was even cozier. We had our new dad, Roy, to redirect the conversation back to sobriety if we got off target with our war stories and past sexual conquests. Roy would get us back on track. These nights typically lasted well past midnight. This new sober crew was way better than my old drunk crew. Combined with the new career I lucked into, I was on top of the world. But then one fine sunny May afternoon at a Florida beach, my life would change forever. I met my dream girl at the beach. We shared frequent glances, and I finally got enough gusto to go talk to her. This was not easy for me, as I had always needed liquid courage to flirt with girls. But by this time, I was developing more inner confidence in myself. By now, I was almost 2 years sober. Within 7 months, we were married. And oh yeah, I started drinking with my beach girl about 3 months into our relationship. She was a nurse who definitely liked to party with her girlfriends, especially after a stressful night at the hospital. It's funny looking back, but it seemed as if I totally overlooked her heavy drinking on her first few dates. I still had no urge to join in, but I stopped going to meetings. I stopped seeing my new sober crew. I stopped talking to Roy, and I started drinking. And I stayed back out for the next 2 decades. At about the ripe old age of 48, I finally had enough. I won't get into the details of my life for those 2 decades. Suffice it to say, there was much chaos combined with enough white-knuckle drying out to keep my job all those years. I was, however, a social misfit who filed bankruptcy 3 times. My fiscal failure was a result of my big, ongoing bar bill. But by 48, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. The thrill was gone. I had 2 sons from 2 different women. There was a big gap in the boys' ages. The younger one I ended up raising alone, as his mom was a secret crack addict. I guess you don't notice these things when you're drunk off your ass 5 times a week. So I quit with both feet in. It was easy. I was so sick of the bars that I became nauseous when I drove by a few of my old haunts. I developed my own program of recovery. I worked out at the YMCA like a maniac 5 times a week. I went to group fitness classes. I did everything with my youngest son. I became a very proud father of a great kid. I discovered a local Buddhist temple where I would go every Friday night to practice loving-kindness meditation. This brought me a new inner peace that was necessary for this old agnostic. After about 7 years of sobriety, however, I realized I was missing something. My health had never been better, lost some weight, and the old severe anxiety had practically vanished. When my mother died, I experienced a depression. One would think that's normal. One should be depressed when a parent dies. But my depression was not overwhelming sadness due to her death. My mom was 86 years old when she passed. The last 3 years of her life were spent in a nursing home due to dementia. I was her only child who lived in Florida, so I was responsible for her. I got her to the hospital after her first collapse. I searched assisted living facilities and nursing homes to find one that would accept her insurance. Once placed in a home, there would be calls from the home due to various incidents and accidents. She broke her hip. Other accidents occurred. My life did have added purpose, as the one child available to work as her overseer. I guess I enjoyed the responsibility. Of course, I became tired of the whole scene and secretly was ready for her demise. And she died. I thought I was okay with this death. My mother lived 86 years. Not bad. She went out peacefully, more or less. What more can one ask for? But within several months, something was weighing on me. I felt burdened by past memories. I thought about my drunk days, the times when Mom might have needed me to help her with some chores around her house. Most of the time, I was too hungover or drunk. I wasn't much help. This was definitely an interruption of my healthy pink cloud I had experienced the past several years. I didn't like it. I would even have dreams about my drunken behavior and not seeing my mother when she asked me to. I had guilt. Memories, long forgotten, had returned, like the time I didn't pick up my mom to take to my house when a hurricane was approaching Florida's west coast. I thought about my old mom waiting for her son to pick her up. I was out drinking that night and forgot. I was at the casino. But despite these feelings, I still didn't want to drink over it. And then a light went off. I need friends like me. I need to be around fellow ex-drunks to talk to. I've been well versed on various psychological approaches to sobriety. Due to my atheism, I am comfortable with a more scientific approach, but science doesn't give you the camaraderie that sober alcoholics crave. Being an old bar hound, I'm essentially a social animal. I like being around people. I have friends at work and fellow soccer moms who know a little about me, not a lot, but a little. I have hinted at past drinking problems with these friends, but not completely. Not completely because these people would not get it. Only fellow Alkies get it. So I started to think about AA. The first night I came back was familiar. The only real difference was that I am 20 years older. The coffee still tasted like mud. The chocolate chip cookies were too crunchy. But when I walked in, I felt cozy. About the author, William F. William F. is a native Rhode Islander living in Florida the past 30 years, works in government, and intends on working with alcoholics when he retires. The original printed version of this story, Rediscovering AA, can be found at the aabeyondbelief.com website under Personal Stories, dated April 3rd,